Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Fulham podcast, brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network, bringing you dedicated and daily coverage on all your Premier League sides, as well as a dose of women's football. My name is Gavin Ruffle, and today I'm reflecting and I'm recapping the events of the weekend as Fulham went to Brighton on a search for another away win, which would have meant a record 4 consecutive wins on the bounce in the Premier League. But as you're well aware, that didn't quite happen today. It wasn't the result you were all looking for, an agonising late defeat. So let's get into it, and let's start from the very beginning. We knew Fulham would be forced into changes for this game, at least one from the last out, and given Sasa Lukic's suspension, we know he's also going to miss the Spurs game next week, so it was going to be interesting to see how they would look to replace him. Traore, I mentioned before as well, he was another doubt coming into this one, limped off in the game at Old Trafford. I think Marco Silva said in the last press conference leading up to the game that he would assess him after another session. Well, the news coming out of that was that he wasn't fit enough to take his place in the 11. He wasn't fit enough to take his place on the bench. So Fulham, how would they react to those absences? Well, they made 3 changes in total. We saw Muniz drop back to the bench, replaced by Jimenez, and they decided to stick with the 5 at the back that worked against Wolves. So we saw Issy Diop retain his place from the last league outing, and we saw Emile Smith-Rowe come back into the team as well. As for Brighton, it was pretty straightforward for them. There was some doubt, some concern about Karu Mitoma after limping off in the FA Cup against Newcastle last weekend. Well, that was confirmed by Hertzler in his press conference that he was actually fit. It was only a bit of cramp. So positive news there for Brighton. He was fit enough to take his place in the starting 11. So just one change for them from that win at St James's, which saw Ayari. He came into midfield, replacing the suspended Tariq Lamptey. Right back, a little bit of a problem area for Brighton at the minute with Veltman also having a knock. So we saw Jack Hinshelwood, the versatile Jack Hinshelwood, he slotted in at right back. And it was interesting to see how Fulham would set up with that 5 at the back and where Alex Iwobi would play. He's played 95% of the time from the left this season. We saw in the reverse fixture at home to Brighton how he dropped back a bit deep, and that was something I wouldn't have been against seeing, but Silva saw it differently. He went for those wing backs of Castagna and Anthony Robinson. We saw Alex Iwobi actually move over to the right side, so he effectively was the one that replaced Traore. And what you noticed from the early stages of the game is how he kept the width on the right side, and then Robinson was the main outlet on the left side, that Smith-Rowe was more tucked in. So on to the game itself then, and there was no real goalmouth action early on, but Fulham did look like they carried some threat. I felt a key battle in this game would be Timothy Castagna, whether or not he could hold down the tricky Karu Mitoma. Mitoma's been in some really good form lately, so I felt that was a boost for Brighton to have him back available for them. But it was a pretty tepid start from both sides. 20 minutes gone, yet to spring to life. But Brighton, as they like to do, they like to pass it around, knock it around, possession-based football. They were starting to enjoy a bit more of the ball. A couple of half chances, nothing really of note. No real alarm bells for the Fulham defence. First major opportunity actually falls to Fulham. It's an Anderson long ball up to Castagna, who crosses from the right. It's not cleared. It comes out to Emile Smith-Rowe. It's on his left foot, but he drags a shot wide via a deflection. I felt Calvin Bassey started the game pretty impressively. I think he's been Fulham's best defender in recent times. He's really stepped up in the last month or two. However, Raul Jimenez up top, bit of a debatable position. I felt like Muniz should have kept his place in the team. I think he's done enough recently to have made that shirt his own. He cut a bit of a frustrated figure at times. He was struggling to affect the game, not getting many touches. I also spoke about Verbruggen in the preview, about how he can be a bit of a liability. We know how teams like to play out from the back, and sometimes this season he's made errors doing that. He made an error in the earlier game of the season against Fulham, which Fulham were able to pounce on. It will be scored after pressure from Harry Wilson. So I just felt Fulham were playing into their hands. They were giving him a bit too much time on the ball. It's not really Jimenez's game, is it, to press so much? So it was just easy for Brighton to just play out from the back then. And for the first half an hour, there wasn't a lot to write home about, but the game all of a sudden sprung into life and Fulham go a goal ahead. And it's brilliant play from Alex Iwobi, brilliant wing play. So he gets the ball about halfway inside his own half, There's not much on, so he goes for a run. He just carries the ball about 30, 40, 50 yards down the right-hand side. So he gets into a crossing position right by the byline. It's a deep one, but it's measured to perfection. It goes over Van Hecke's head, and Jimenez, who at this point, as I said, he's not had many touches, hasn't had any chances on goals, looking a bit frustrated, down in the dumps, waving his arms around, but he chests the ball down, and it falls perfectly into his path. His next touch, he slides it in with his left foot past Verbruggen. And that was a milestone goal for Raul Jimenez. That's his 10th Premier League goal of the season. First time he's reached that figure in a good few years since the successful early days at Wolves. So Fulham have got something to hold on to there, but they can't hold on to it for long because 5 minutes later, Brighton are back level, and it's a pretty poor goal to give away. So it's a free kick. It's about 35 yards out, left of central. Ayari's standing over it. He chips a ball up towards the back post, and then Van Hecke, who may have been slightly at fault for Fulham's goal, he's free. He's free as a bird. Nobody's picked him up, and he's time to pick his spot, guide his header towards goal. He heads it back towards the far post. Unfortunately for Brighton, it hits the post and goes in. Leno, he's rooted to his spot and left helpless, just hoping that the ball hits the post and goes to safety, but it doesn't. And that was Van Hecke's first goal for Brighton, which is quite surprising given the way he took it and given how much of a threat you think he can be from set pieces. So after a pretty uninteresting first half an hour, the game had sprung to life and the sides went in level at the interval. Half-time whistle goes and it's on as even. I think it was a fair score. There was some gentle sparring early on, but in the last 10 minutes, both sides got their goal. It's what we used to see in Fulham games away from home, isn't it? You're usually good for a goal, but they're also susceptible at conceding as well. So I think they would have been disappointed, certainly, in the fact they weren't able to hold on to that lead for a little bit longer. And in the next part, I will come on to the action in the second half. But before then, let me just tell you a little bit about our sponsors. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. On to the second half then, and you just wonder if the game will slightly liven up. These are two very good footballing sides, like to play free-flowing football, and despite the fact that we got 2 goals in the first half, we weren't necessarily seeing that. With the goal-mouth action we actually saw in the first 45, we did well to get 2 goals out of it. So I guess the question for both sides is how much did they want to get the win here? Because a win could make a big difference, but at the same time, a defeat could be damaging. So would they do their utmost to win the game, or as the game would progress, would they settle for the draw? Promising signs early on at the start of the second half for Brighton. João Pedro, who had a pretty quiet half in the first half, he had one effort that was on target, but I think that would have been ruled out for offside had it gone in. He was kind of living off scraps and he was drifting over to the left side, so it was an early chance for him as he plays a 1-2 with Rutter, gets in behind the Fulham backline, sits up for him from the left side of the box. He's just got Leno to beat, sits up for him on half volley, but he fires it wide. It was the first real opening for him, as I said. After that, there's almost an opening for Fulham. It's long ball forward from Diop, which Webster kind of misjudges. Jimenez is almost able to get in behind. He elects to shoot from quite a wide angle. He needs to go across the goalkeeper, but he decides to go near post and is only able to flash an effort wide. Just after that, Brighton do have the ball in the back of the net. However, it is ruled out for a marginal offside. It's sloppy play in the middle of the park from Fulham, from Issa Diop. João Pedro's involved again. He plays a ball into Minter, who then slides it across for Matoma to tap in from very close range, but the flag goes up straight away. And we see that Minter, he's just strayed into an offside position in the build-up, so a let-off there, reprieve for Fulham. But the game did have a better feel to it. You felt that both teams were trying at this stage to fashion goal to get them in front. Most of Fulham's good play was coming from Alex Iwobi, obviously playing in a slightly different position in this game, but generally the good stuff they were doing he was at the heart of. We saw Emile Smith-Rowe disappoint first half. He was often dropping a bit deeper, trying to get more involved. Felt Castagna got into some decent positions, probably Robinson as well, so both wing-backs got into decent positions. but their final ball, their delivery just wasn't good enough. Often wayward or just easy for Brighton defenders to clear away. So we saw changes for both sides as the managers tried to make a difference, make a telling contribution. Gomez coming on for Ayari in the middle of the park for Brighton, and then a straight swap for Fulham. Muniz coming on for Jimenez. So it was a bit of a mixed afternoon for Jimenez, to be quite honest. He got the goal, took it really well, but apart from that, he did look a bit frustrated at times. Was trying to drop a bit deeper himself to get involved, was drifting out to the left at times just to get a piece of the ball, but even when he had possession I felt like he was a bit slow at times in releasing it. So despite his goal, I don't think his overall play aside from that was particularly great. So Muniz, we know he's come on at various stages this season and made an impact off of the bench. That time came again. As the game went on in the second half, it almost seemed like both teams was kind of settling for a point, which would have been a decent-ish point for both sides. I felt Fulham could have made a substitution to try and get the winner. Robinson wasn't having his most effective game. He just got a booking as well, so I would have liked to seen Sessegnon come on for the last 15-20 minutes, particularly in this system with the five at the back, and obviously getting the goal in the last league game against Wolves. You felt maybe his confidence would be up for that, so I would have liked to see Fulham maybe try and go for the winner, him come on for Robinson. But we didn't see that change. What we did see was Danny Welbeck come on for the last 15. Talk about players being effective coming off from the bench. Well, Danny Welbeck's been just that for Brighton. He's actually scored a couple recently coming off from the bench. March also comes on for Brighton. His action's been limited this season, just coming back from a long-term injury. And there's 10 minutes left in the game. You feel like the next goal wins it almost certainly. Defences are on top. Just missing that final piece in the jigsaw. Both teams should try and unlock the defence and trying to fashion opportunity which can lead to that winning goal. But all it takes is one mistake, one moment of magic, and that can make all the difference. It often does, doesn't it? Some more changes for Fulham. Pereira and Smith Rowe come off. Harrison Reed comes on, and Williams also come on. Not long after that, one of the substitutes is involved, and it's a golden opportunity, and it falls for Danny Welbeck. Pedro again, who's drifted out to the left. He whips a ball in with his right foot. Danny Welbeck, he rises, but he gets his header all wrong. He should at least hit the target, but instead it just kind of hits him, and it's a let off for Fulham. I felt at times when there was a chance for Fulham to break and commit players forward, they didn't do it quickly enough, and often at times when you think they're in a good position, the ball ends up with a centre-half, it ends up with a goalkeeper, maybe showing that lack of true willingness to go out and win the game. But certainly their first focus was on not losing it rather than trying to win it, which is how I felt watching the game anyway. Final changes for Brighton, we saw Adingra and Vifa come on for Mitoma and Belieber. Fulham generally did a good job keeping tabs on Mitoma, and almost immediately after coming on, Adingra has the ball in the back of the net. Webster clips a ball in over Castagna. Adingra collects it and slots it past Leno, but once again Fulham defenders are relieved to see the offside flag go up. Final change does see Ryan Sessegnon come on a bit later than I would have liked. He comes on for the impressive Iwobi, and just like in the outing against Manchester United when he came off the bench there, he went over to play on the right side. There's almost another chance for Fulham from a corner. It's an in-swinger from Willian, fizzes it in at pace to the near post. Anderson gets contact on it but glances a header over. Talk about Muniz, how sometimes this season he's been seen as a sub. Well, to be honest, since coming on, he'd made no impression on the game at all. Barely touched it. Talk about the difficulties Jimenez had in the game. Well, Muniz was finding it very similar as well. Ball wasn't coming to him and was just finding things a little bit difficult there against the Brighton defenders. And it looked like the game was just petering out. Brighton, they were not getting the ball into the box, and both teams were almost waiting for the final whistle to go. But before the final whistle does go, there is one piece of action, one big piece of action, which has the final say on the game. 5 minutes added on, the clock's ticked over, gone 15-20 seconds past the 5-minute mark. There's one last attack for Brighton. If Fulham can just clear their lines, keep this attack at bay, then the referee's surely going to blow the final whistle. But, oh no, they don't, do they? Because play develops down the left-hand side. Welbeck just about managed to keep the ball in play. He digs out a ball to João Pedro and he's going nowhere. He's crowded out, surrounded by Fulham players. All they have to do is just crowd around him, not commit a foul, collect the ball, hoof it upfield, and the final whistle goes. But no, that doesn't happen, does it? Because Harrison Reed, who's come on a sub, he puts out a lazy leg. João Pedro falls down, and it's a penalty. It's a definite penalty. It's lazy, it's clumsy, it's stupid from Harrison Reed. He just catches him on the foot, on the back of the leg. It's a penalty. No doubt about it, it's a penalty. Pedro, he picks himself up to take the penalty. Leno was the hero last week in the shootout against United. Can he be the hero here? Well, the answer to that is no. Pedro puts it to his left, not quite in the corner. Leno gets a hand to it, but not strong enough to keep it out. And that's the game. That's full time. Brighton have nicked it. An absolute killer for Fulham. Sickener. It looked like the game was just meandering. Both sides are set off for the draw, but stupid mistake, stupid error at the end has cost Fulham. It's cost them a point. Brighton, on the other hand, they finally beaten Fulham at the 10th attempt in the Premier League. They've got that win over Fulham. And in the final part, I will give my reflections and overall feelings on the game itself and where this now leaves Fulham.
Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bionique, the world's most personalised supplements. Bionique provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN 2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bionique. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
More points dropped from a winning position. Another late goal going in against them. Something we've not necessarily seen so much of late. It was more of a theme, more of a pattern in around October, November time, how they were letting games slip, letting games get away. And this was another one of those occasions. Although I say that, I don't feel Fulham deserved. They certainly didn't deserve to win the game. Did either side do enough to win it? I don't think so. I think 1-1 would have been fair enough. It almost seemed like in the second half, both sides were settling for that point. And even in the last stages of the game, when Brighton had possession, they weren't showing eagerness to get the ball forward into the box to give themselves a chance at goal. It is frustrating to lose a game so late on. You walk away from the Amex with a point and you're satisfied with that. Tough place to go. They've not lost so many games at home this season. You come away with a point. You're both kind of where you are in the table, where you were at the start of the day, and you're still in with a great chance of European football. And I don't think this changes things dramatically. I don't think there's any need to be reactionary and say, oh, the league season's suddenly over now because they've lost late on at Brighton. Marco Silva said he was disappointed with the second half performance, and I felt that way watching it at times. I just felt like when there was a chance to grab the game by the scruff of the neck, commit players forward, try to win the game. They didn't show that ambition. When they had the ball in decent areas high up the pitch, quite often it would end up with the centre arse 5-10 seconds later. So it seemed like they were content enough to sit on that point. I think the nature of the goals is the most disappointing thing about the result, because I felt for most of the game Fulham were well organised and limited Brighton's threat. I know Matoma was pretty quiet, kept him at bay for large parts. But the two goals they conceded were of a very disappointing nature. The first one comes from a free kick, not in a particularly threatening position, out wide on the left. And it's an easy header. Well, I say it's an easy header. Van Hecke takes it well, but he's allowed into that place, into that space in the first place. He goes unmarked, untracked, and he just has the free sighting of goal. So the fact that Fulham couldn't hold on to their lead for more than 5 minutes and at least take that into the interval with them would have been disappointing. Marco Silva would have been frustrated by that, and he would have been equally frustrated by the nature of the winning goal, where, look, some people are complaining because 5 minutes have been played and they carry on for another 15-20 seconds. Look, it's minimum of 5 minutes. I think we should all know that by now. They can't stick 5 minutes 30 on the board, can they? So you just play to the whistle, and you know for sure that if Fulham clear that attack, then the referee's going to blow the whistle and it ends in a 1-1 draw. But Harrison Reed, he just dangles a leg out, and João Pedro, he's not going anywhere. He gives him exactly what he wants, and it is a penalty. You can complain, moan about referees till you're blue in the face, but if that was at the other end, you'd all be calling for a penalty, wouldn't you? And I don't think there's any doubt about it. It is a penalty. Even if the referee didn't give it and it went to VAR, I think they probably would have overturned it, to be honest. No complaints about the penalty. There wasn't a lot in the game. There wasn't a sustained period of Brighton pressure and backs against the wall defending from Fulham where you thought you're just hanging on for a point there. You felt like it was just, as I said, meandering. But no, it ends in defeat, which, believe it or not, is the first time Fulham have lost outside of London and Manchester this season, which just illustrates the form they've shown on the road this season. I think Marco Silva does have to take a bit of blame for this defeat, and I say that because of the system he played, the five at the back. I just don't think it quite works with Fulham. I understand why he played it in the Wolves game when he was resting players. Anthony Robinson not playing in that game, so he played Sessegnon. I can understand it from that side of things, because you're wondering about Sessegnon. Is he equipped at this stage to play left back in the Premier League? Probably not. So playing at 5 at the back to accommodate him, to get him to play, I felt was fine. But it's not something after that game I really wanted to see them go back to. I thought before the Wolves game we wouldn't see it again after that experiment we saw in December. I think Ipswich was the last time he played it, and it didn't go so well there. So I thought that was something we would kind of see the back of. Also a strange game to play it in, because they have been used to playing against teams that set up with 5 at the back. So it seems peculiar that he's decided to go with that when he's playing against the back 4. I feel like he's tried to complicate matters there, tried to be a bit clever when things don't need to be complicated. He's missing a couple of players, missing a couple of key players, Sasa Lukic and Adama Traore, but I don't feel like he's needed to change the formation because of those absences. If Arne Slot was missing Gravenberch or Luis Diaz, he wouldn't then suddenly decide to play an extra centre-half, would he? So I find it strange. I just don't feel they're suited. I don't think certain personnel are suited to that system. I don't think Anthony Robinson works as effectively playing in a back 5. So I am surprised he's decided to go back to it. I felt it should have been binned in December, and I certainly feel it should be binned now. We've seen criticism for Amorim recently because of his stubbornness and lack of flexibility, lack of want to change his system. But that's more understandable because you watch Manchester United sets up and they're not necessarily having the success playing that system. When you watch Fulham play in a 4, you're not watching it suddenly thinking, oh, I think they'd be better off playing in a 5. So I don't know why he's done that. If Adama and Sasa Lukic were fit, would he have gone to a 5? I don't think he would have. So why, because a couple of personnel are out through suspension or injury, has he decided, I've got to change my formation here, I've got to tweak it? Don't understand that. I think he's trying to be a bit too clever there, but it wasn't the situation to be clever in. So I think he's got to take some blame for that. And hopefully going forward, that's something we don't see, because he's not done it before this season, has he? So I don't know why suddenly he's decided recently back 5, that might be something worth looking at. But they are still in the mix for European football. It is still tight at this stage. There's going to be twists, there's going to be turns, so all's not lost yet. And we have seen Fulham, when they have lost games, they have tended to react well and win their next game. So hopefully they can do that. Got another London derby coming up next weekend against Spurs. I think where they may fall short this season, though, is how you look at the other teams. You compare them to some of the sides in and around them, above them, the likes of Bournemouth, Brighton and Nottingham Forest, how those sides have gone on a streak. We've seen Brighton now, after that 7-0 humiliation against Nottingham Forest, they've reacted in the best possible fashion, and that could prove to be the turning point of their season, the pivotal result they needed to give them the kick up the backside they needed. And that result, in a weird sort of way, in a weird turn of events, might be the result, the catalyst that gets them European football. And they're not far off the Champions League themselves, which just shows how quickly things can change and how tight things are in the table. So I think what Fulham have lacked this season compared to those other sides is the ability to string wins together. They seem to be able to get 2 wins, but then not more than that. We've seen Brighton here, I think that's 6 wins in all competitions now, in a row now, isn't it? And Fulham have just maybe lacked that sort of momentum at any stage in the season. But all's not lost, there's still a lot to play for, isn't there? And you don't lose hope just yet. So yeah, the players are going to be hurting, they're going to be down in the dumps for a day or two, but you pick yourselves up, you go again for the game next week against Spurs. That'll just about do it for today's recap of all of the events of the weekend's game. Thank you all once again for listening, and be sure to stay tuned to the Daily Fulham podcast as we build up to that game next Sunday, that London derby, and hopefully we can see a better result for Fulham. Catch you all next time.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.